Noticed me watching and called out to them, "Why don't you let Lisa have it?" Her thick bangs were feathered on both sides. She had a smooth, low voice and a kind face. My father kept rolling it, swiping his finger in front of the sparks. But then he handed it to me and said, ceremoniously, "A gift. You have it." Tina and my father had met several years before, when she was working at the philanthropic wing of Apple, and my father was still living at the house in Monte Cerno, where we'd taken the couch. She was a software engineer, warm and introvert. Her beauty was something she shied away from, as if she didn't want it or care for it, and so it wasn't notable to me, even years later, because she didn't foster it or nudge it forward with affections, makeup, or fancy clothing. She was just Tina. There was a group of good people that hung around Tina, family and friends, artists and scientists, who, like her, took an interest in me and my mother, so that during the years that she and my father were together, I felt there was an extra layer of protection around my mother, my father, and me. She told me years later that my father insisted persuasively when they first met that I wasn't really his kid. When she saw me, it was obvious that I was. But when she brought it up, he refused to discuss it. My father invited me to come on vacation to Hawaii with the two of them. I was in the 4th grade, almost 10. My mother and I didn't go on vacations, so I wasn't sure what to expect. When we arrived on the tarmac, the sky was bright white. The airport buildings were not enclosed, but outside with wide brown roofs. Humidity blurring the line between my skin and the air. A man wearing a polo shirt gave us each a long necklace made of many sweet-smelling hot pink blossoms with yellow centers, and we followed him to a white den. On the drive, there were only miles of charred black land, and I worried he was taking us to a moonscape only he thought was beautiful. But then we took a left toward the ocean and a circle of green. The grass at the resort was mown short as blazed and dotted with shade from palm trees with long, thin trunks, like strings. At breakfast, brown birds the size of my fist chirped in the high rafters and dropped down onto each just vacant table, messy with napkins, syrup, and bitten pieces of toast. They hopped and picked at crumbs and squabbled until the waiter came to clear, and they rose back up in unison to wait for another. Beside the pool, I watched a peacock fan out, quivering, cawing. It stood still for a while, and then strode away, still fanned out, in slow, methodical steps that made the whole semicircle of plumage sway. That week, I walked barefoot along the sand paths, the warm rising through my calves to my knees. After a few days, the dark hairs on my arms became blonde to the roots. In the ocean, the grains of sand and the yellow fish that were strummed up in the shallow waves were bright and clear, magnified by the water. Before this trip, I'd never heard of virgin pina coladas. Now I had at least 3 a day. I made a friend around my age named Lauren, who also lived in California, and together we ran between lawns, meals, pools, beaches. The black-lipped fish, the one black swan, the birds and geckos. In the gift shop were cuff bracelets an inch wide, each made of a single piece of coy wood polished to glow. "Let's pick out for your mother and Tina," my father said. They cackled against each other on the rail. I wanted a bracelet too, but my hands and wrists were too small. He bought me a bikini made of red cotton with a flower pattern. I'd never worn a bikini before. My new friend Lauren had a similar one, also from the gift shop, but in blue. Tina wore jeans and t-shirts and china flats. She had wide wrists and large breasts and crouched down on her heels when she was speaking with me, so we were closer to the same height. She laughed in a full way, and it made her whole face pretty. Her nose was like my mother's, straight and small, with a pointed end that veered slightly to one side. She cut her own bangs. Tina had a happy, sad quality and dry, self-depreciating humor. She was delighted by me. She liked me. I could tell. To me, she seemed like she was a woman, but also a little girl, or could remember so clearly what it was like to be my age that there wasn't such a distance between us. When we were back in Palo Alto and we went somewhere all together in my father's Porsche, she would squeeze her tall body in the back so I could sit up front with him. She was a strange combination with my father. I could tell even then. He would often become grandiose about himself, leaving behind the part of him that matched with her. She could wear a sack, a brown sack, I heard my father say, as if beauty was measured by how strong an obstacle it had to overcome. It was the same way he spoke about Ingrid Bergman. I watched for it in Tina because I didn't think of her as particularly beautiful. Her eyelashes were blonde as her hair. She didn't try, and the trying was beauty to me then. But a few times when she tossed her bangs out of her face, her eyes shone in the sunlight, the color of the swimming pool, and her face opened up, beautiful until she looked down and adjusted her bangs and looked ordinary to me again. On the way to dinner, on the white sand path that wound through the forest, Tina and I flanking him, he put an arm around us both, a hand around my ribs, under my armpit. "These are the women of my life," he said in a slow, measured nasal voice, like he was announcing a new act at a show. He looked up and out as he said it, addressing the statement to the forest. I was one of his women. It filled me up with such a surge of joy I had to look away, look down at the path, at my bare feet, so he wouldn't see I was smiling. He leaned toward Tina to kiss her, and the arm he had around me yanked up as he leaned so that he crawled under my armpit, fingers jerking with his steps. I wanted to stay within his grasp, to be one of his women. "Isn't she beautiful?" he said at dinner, when Tina got up to go to the bathroom. Whenever he and I were alone for a moment, he talked to me about her beauty, sighing as if she were far away or it was out of reach. When she returned, he leaned forward and kissed her, murmuring and whispering in her ear. She demurred. He grabbed the back of his head, his chair balanced on one leg. As they kissed, he pressed his palm against her breast, wrinkling the fabric of her t-shirt. He said. I was simultaneously repulsed and intrigued. I guess my role was to watch and note how much he adored her, even though it gave me a strange feeling to be near them when they did this. The act was exaggerated, like a performance. It did not seem natural or real. Why didn't she stop him? Maybe because she was very young and in love. "Why did you two make out in front of me?" I asked Tina at some point much later. "It's what he did when he was uncomfortable," she said. "He was uncomfortable around you because he didn't know how to relate to you," she said. "The charm that worked on adults didn't work on you, a child. You saw through it. So he would lunge towards me to ease his own discomfort. The idea that my presence was The very thing that made him seem to be unaware of me was almost inconceivable because in those moments I felt like nothing, a speck, not worth a look. It was so extreme, Tina said, that when we returned from Hawaii, she decided not to come over when I was around so that he might learn how to be with me on his own. Mona and my mother had also noticed the way my father made out with Tina, sometimes for minutes at a time, moaning. It wasn't just me. He did it in front of adults too. But I was a child, and this behavior was inappropriate. My mother and Mona were concerned about his jokes and public displays, and this had been, in part, the impetus for Mona's insistence, not long after we returned from Hawaii, that as the child of a single mother without a continuous fatherly presence, it would be a good idea if I saw a male psychiatrist in order to have the experience of forming a close relationship with a good and stable man. My mother agreed it was a good idea, and my father agreed to that. My father drove me to meet Dr. Lee, a therapist recommended by Mona's in New York, whom I would continue to see once per week, starting at age 9 for many years. My memory became clearer after I started seeing him, perhaps because I was older or because during our weekly sessions I tried to put my life into words. When he was done kissing Tina, my father righted his chair, sighed, and ate. You know, he said, Tina was on television once in a commercial when she was a girl, younger than you. I was impressed. Later, my father played it for me, a blonde girl standing beside a boy who opens his fist onto the counter of a beach shop, releasing pocket change and a marble to pay for a box of Cracker Jack. After dessert, he took Tina's hand and looked at her palm. I don't know what the lines are supposed to mean, he said. I'm not sure either, Tina said. If only we could tell our futures. I know how to read them, I said to my father. Give me your right hand. How about the left, he said, because it was closer. No, that's the destiny you were given. I want to see the right one. What will you make of it? Okay, he said, and stretched it across his body. His palms were flat, without the knuckle hills that poked up around the finger joints, a quality my mother and I had talked about along with others, like the zipper teeth. The inside of his palms glowed pale yellow, the lines deep orange. He ate and drank carrot salad and carrot juice, the color of wet clay, on the hillsides in such great quantities they tinted him from the inside out. So this one's your lifeline, I said, and this one's your mind. So one's your marriage and one's your heart, see? Okay, so what does this mean, he said. The line curved from below his index finger to his wrist. It's a pretty long life, I said, but your mind line isn't long. See, it's here. It cracks, splits open. I was predicting what I knew he'd like the least, to live long and intellectually middling life. It would puncture his arrogance, the way he seemed magnanimous but disconnected. His feeling of his own tragic greatness so strong he had less energy to notice others. I knew he wouldn't be aware that I already knew this about him, because every time he told me a story about himself and what he wanted, he'd forget he'd told me before. And he wouldn't know that I understood he was sad to die young. But he also found it glamorous. All right, he said, and pulled back his hand. Tina sat still while my friend Lauren and I French braided her hair beside the pool. Lauren showed me how to save hair as we wove down the nape of her neck. After we were done, my father pulled me onto his lap. He was sitting on a lounge chair, and Tina was sitting beside us on another. He told Lauren he wanted some time alone with us, and she left to find her family. I wanted to play, but he held me. Look how we both have eyebrows and that come together in the middle, he said, and how we have the same nose. He ran his index finger down the bridge of my nose. No, we don't, I said. Mine's small. Mine doesn't point down like that. Just wait, he said. It will. Like he knew the future. He grabbed my ankle and held it in his hand, inspecting my foot. Looks like your second toe might become longer than your big toe, he said. It's a sign of intelligence, he said, to have the longer second toe. Maybe yours will grow if you're lucky. Ha, I said, as if I didn't care. Uh-oh, Tina said, looking at her foot on the ground. I couldn't tell. She was joking. Did you know I've got narrow feet, he said. It looks like you do too. And look at your fingers. They're like mine too. Our nails are shaped the same. We held out our hands. I couldn't tell about the nails. Mine were so much smaller that it seemed impossible to compare. My heart beat like a bird's heart, quick and light in my chest. It was what I wanted. All his attention focused on me, all at once. You're kind of my kid, you know, he said, holding me even though he'd stopped looking. I know, I said. I wasn't sure why he said it. He stopped speaking, but kept his hold. I was hoping the moment would end. The heavy, oppressive feeling of being held like that. Let's just sit here, he said. Let's all just be quiet for a minute and sit here. His arm was like a seatbelt around my waist. Liz, you're gonna remember this, he said, full of feeling. I sat still, hardly breathing, hoping it would be enough and he'd let me go. Lunch was being laid out, vats of fresh salad and fish, avocado, grapefruit, crab claws on ice. A separate table just for cakes. Finally he said, let's get lunch, and released me. I took a huge breath and running leap. They lingered behind, walking slowly toward me and lunch. After dinner that night, we walked back to our thatched huts called Hales. On the white sand path, the tiki lanterns along the path flickered and cast patterns of light, and in pockets the sour kerosene burned my nostrils. Geckos chirped like metal birds, wound around the poles of black lights stuck in the ground, and spun away when I tried to touch them. The forest was thick with veined, waxy leaves wrapped around other leaves. The fragrance was stronger at night, sweet and cool, as if the flowers were exhaling. The air smelled of flowers, decay, and salt.